Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN AM for Thursday, May 2nd, 2024. And our top story today, attracting the future hospital workforce. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, John Lowell is with October 3 Consulting. John, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us again on the program this morning.
Morning, Jeff. Really good to see you again. Always glad to be here.
Yeah, last time, John, we had you on with Dan Doonan of the National Institute of Retirement Security. You talked about retirement insecurity. Today, we're going to kind of drill down, and I want to, I think we should do this on a regular basis on different sectors of the economy or segments of the economy. Let's talk about the uniqueness of the healthcare workforce. They're facing a lot of staffing shortages, attracting nurses, other types of staff. How unique is the hospital workforce?
Everything you just said, Jeff, is correct. And they are facing unique challenges because their workforce is probably a little bit different than anybody else out there. And one thing that's not specifically a workforce issue, but is related to most hospitals as well, is most of them are also tax-exempt organizations. So there's always that little element that sneaks its way into conversations. It makes them different from an awful lot of employers out there. But when we think about what makes a hospital workforce unique in really a lot of ways, and this is more in train of thought order than anything else, they tend to be a very highly skilled workforce. For starters, you have your physicians and you have your nurses and you have your physician's assistants and people like that. And they've all had a lot of very highly technical, detailed schooling and training, and they're constantly learning things. Also, if you go into a hospital as compared to other employers, certainly other large employers, you see more women in hospitals than you do in other employers. And that comes back to a real retirement issue that I'm sure we'll get to later. Over the last several years, certainly since COVID hit us, there's been tremendous burnout in the hospital sector, and that's something that doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. As a result, it's a very competitive hiring market. If you talk to hospital CFOs, even, and so we're not just talking the HR people, but the finance people, and I do this, I hear that number one on the plate for a lot of them is how do we attract and retain really good people? But not just that, and again, I'm sure we'll come back to this, how do I manage my workforce? If I've got I don't want to pick on nurses or on people of that age, but if I've got a 75-year-old nurse, there's a good chance they really don't want to be doing nursing anymore. But they may be doing it because it's what they know and they have no alternative. And then the other thing at the other end of the spectrum, so you've got the older, more experienced workers, you've also got the ones who are fresh out of school, and frequently they are dealing with a lot of debt. But since their focus is on patient care, their focus may not be on their own financial care. So those are a number of things that I think are somewhat not necessarily unique, but certainly the combination is unique to the hospital sector.
Yeah, and let's face it, everyone on this call, everyone watching this show, we're all going to need to go to a hospital or a healthcare organization throughout our lifetime. So it's obviously important that they are staffed and they have the right talent. John, I want to ask you, how important does the retirement benefit? We're talking about retirement, obviously, on the Broadcast Retirement Network. Is that retirement benefit still at the top of priorities for applicants? So if I'm the nurse you're talking about, whether I'm 75 or whether I'm 25, fresh out of nursing school, when I'm applying to hospital A, B, C, or D, or E, F, G, all the way through Z, where's that prioritization in terms of that retirement benefit?
Well, I certainly can't believe that one particular benefit is the most important to everybody, or the second most important to everybody, or that two new hires are going to look at a rewards package the same way as each other. But it's very interesting because anecdotally, I've spoken to a few people lately who have just come out of nursing school. So people who graduated this week, and they have accepted jobs at hospitals near me. And one of the things that attracted all three of them is that the hospital that they chose to work at offers a traditional pension plan. These are people, just out of nursing school, they are young, and they see people their parents' age who are struggling to retire. They know that at this point in their lives, they're dealing with some debt, they're dealing with new expenses, they want to live on their own. And they don't have the ability at age 22 or 23 or 24 to save as much as the models say they're supposed to be saving. So knowing that their new employer that they're about to have is going to be providing them with a pension, something that will grow over time, will build up, and eventually they can retire with and from. They viewed that as a really, really significant motivator in making the choice they did. One of them in particular said she was offered $10,000 more to go to a different hospital and chose not to because she liked the retirement program and she liked the culture at the organization she chose to go with.
Yeah, I think there's a new lens that even younger people have. They're looking at these benefits, and that was really the purpose of my question. John, last question before we go to a commercial break, and we're going to pick up the details of this. But in your mind, and you sit in a lot of quarterly meetings and maybe even monthly meetings with your clients, a lot of whom may be healthcare providers. How do you build the proper retirement program for healthcare institutions? So knowing that healthcare is unique, it's unlike probably a lot of other vocations, a lot of other segments of the economy. So how do you start to develop that program? Because it's, the way oftentimes it's discussed, it's defined benefit or pension versus DC or 401k. That's how they're traditionally known. So how do you start building that benefit?
That's a really great question. And to some extent, hospitals are unique there, but in a lot of ways, this is the same way we would do it with other organizations as well. But in particular with hospitals, because of the nature of their workforce, the way I tend to start is rather than giving answers, I ask a lot of questions. How are your people doing with the program they have right now? Are they able to retire? Do you have people who are leaving where their primary reason for leaving is so they can access their 401k or 403b money? In other words, take a lump sum distribution of the whole thing, pay taxes on it that they perhaps didn't realize they were going to have to pay, and then hopefully pay down some debt. There's an alarming amount of that right now going on in the US. But in asking a lot of questions and understanding what the healthcare organization has as its goals, and in 2024, it's hard to find one where attraction and retention are not key goals. Start to focus start to focus on that. Have they thought about what their cost of unwanted turnover is? And to the extent that they have, if we can help them to design a really great retirement program where the incremental cost of that program over another one is less than the cost of their unwanted turnover, they've got to win. They're making their employees happy and they're doing it for less money. And we've found that that's frequently the case. They really can do that.
Yeah. Well, John, as I said, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to pick up the conversation. We'll talk more about plan design features. And it's not always DC versus DB. They can actually work together. We're going to talk about that more with John. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. We're joined this morning by John Lowell of October 3 Consulting. John, really appreciate you hanging around for segment number 2 this morning.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
And I want to get into, it doesn't have to be all one side or all the other side when you're building a program. So you can have a different feel. And I think you guys have been very unique at October 3 about doing that, offering that. But I want to talk about something that for a long time, for the last 40 years, 30 years, portability and moving from one job to another. You know, that 75-year-old nurse you were talking about, he or she, they're not going to stick. They generally now people don't stick around long. They might stick around for 5 or 6 years. You can still have a portable benefit, whether it's a DC or a DB plan.
Well, you can. And Jeff, offering portability is really something you can do almost regardless of your design. The fact is that in most traditional pension plans, not all because there are some that do it, but in most traditional pension plans, lump sum options are not available. So if you have a plan that was real common, let's say back in the 80s, where your benefit was based on years of service and your pay when you left, typically you can't get a lump sum out of that. So what you get is you get some form of annuity at some retirement age. That's the norm. If an employer wants to do it, they can offer a lump sum from that plan to make it portable. And you can take that lump sum and roll it over to an IRA. Or if your new employer will accept it, roll it over to their plan or plans. So there's nothing necessarily unique about DB versus DC from that standpoint. And as you and I have discussed before, cash balance plans being sort of the hybrid between the two, the DB plan that looks like a DC plan, they almost always offer lump sum options which are portable. The other side of the coin, of course, is what is it that young people, actually, what is it that so many workers of all ages are looking for these days? They're worried about being able to retire someday, and what they really feel like they're missing is the ability to manage their own money and the ability to therefore get a guaranteed amount of lifetime income. You don't get that with portability. What you get that with is by having that annuity option that's going to pay you out. So ultimately, whether it's a hospital organization or some other organization, I'm a fan of having some sort of a defined benefit plan, whatever fits your organization, as well as some sort of a savings plan, a 401k, or in the case of many hospitals, a 403b plan. So you have the two of them working together in sync. An employee can have the portability. They're able to somewhat customize things based on their own situation to their own situation. And if you suddenly drop me in as the head of HR or a CFO for a hospital organization and said, you know, we've got this problem, that would be one of the things that I would focus on, is making the retirement program, both from an annuity standpoint and from a savings standpoint, work properly for my organization.
And John, you talked about in segment 1, the CFO, and he or she, they have to manage the flow of money. One of the things that they've always been concerned with with the traditional DB plan is the cost and the volatility in that contribution. But that's not really the new wave of pension plans, right? I mean, there are methodologies now available to have that guaranteed lifetime benefit that you're talking about, along with the DC, and for the CFO to be able to sleep at night and not, keel over. You have the ability to measure and monitor and invest along that volatility curve.
There are lots of strategies that can be used. Some of them are more investment strategies. Some of them are design, but there are all sorts of hedging strategies that the investment professionals have come up with for DB plans that tend to keep the costs relatively stable, certainly at least in most years. At the same time, there are design strategies, and one that has really come into fruition over the last 18 months or so, since the passage of Secure 2.0, are the market return cash balance plans. The reason is that the assets and the liabilities are necessarily linked together for almost all participants in almost all years. So if you ask me to design a plan that's going to cost 5% of payroll, I can do that, and I can have near certainty that the costs are going to stay stable at that level pretty much for the duration. Something like that will really ease a CFO's mind in knowing that this is more like a fixed expense than a variable expense, and they know what to do with fixed expenses.
Yeah, well, you can budget for those. The thing you don't ever want is to get hey, our contribution is going to be all the way up here, and then the next year you've got that surplus. But I think, as you're talking about, there are definitely strategies out there, and I think that's part of the evolution that we're talking about with traditional pension plans moving to this. I'm not going to call them hybrid because that means something in our industry, but move to a different approach. John, we're going to have to leave it there, but as I alluded to, we're going to have to do more sector-specific programs, because I think the challenges in each sector of the economy very unique. Be interesting to get your point of view on that. John Lowell, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Jeff, thank you. Looking forward to it, as always.
And that wraps up this episode of BRNAM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Well, then visit our website. We're back again tomorrow with another edition of BRNAM. We'll have a very special guest and another important topic. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.